Okay, if we could move along here. Okay, so I'll just go over again what we've got. We have 12-2, 5, 7, 9, 23, 24, and 26. Anything else? Councillor Gartner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think you have 11,
Okay.
19,
I'm sorry?
19,
Yep.
22, and 28.
And 28.
Thank you.
Anything else, Council? Okay, so let me go through that. We have 2, 5, 7, 9, 11, 19, 22, 23, 24, 26, 28. Correct? Councillor Elliott. Mr. Elliott.
In today's additional items piece, there was an item called Museum Collection Infrastructure.
Yep.
And it could be penciled in as 12-33. We should, just as we just did before,
Okay.
confirm that that's on the consent agenda or it's pulled.
Okay, so I have oh, first of all, I need a motion to reconvene, please. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Perry, all in favor? God, we're going backwards here. I have a request from Mr. Downey. One of his staff is getting married in about an hour. So if we could deal with any of his items first. So Mr. Downey, help us here. 12-5. One of Mr. Downey's staff is getting married in about an hour, and he would like to be there. So we're going to try and, hopefully it's close. Keep going here. So we have 12-5 would be yours. Trail? 12-11?
28. 28. 24.
Okay, so I'm sorry, 5, 22, 23, 28, correct? Mr. Downey?
5, I have 5, 22, 23, 24, 26, 28.
Okay.
24.
All right, let's start at 5, and I think based on the other discussion, we're probably looking for a B on that one.
B?
Councillor Maracas, Councillor Perry? All in favor? On,
Can I ask a question?
sure,
Is that allowed? Thank you.
yeah. I said it is, so you can.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I noticed the funding is completely the town. There's no other funding source. For example, is the soccer club going to contribute any money to this?
See, Mr. Mayor, no. We asked and they said no.
Did they give a reason? I'd like to know a reason why, because someone, and I haven't been to an AGM in a while, but I think they have almost $1 million in reserves. So I don't know what that conversation is, but it's a sizable amount of money, and I think they should be looking for partnerships for us to advance this, because we'll set an amazing precedent if we go 100% at $1 million plus. I just think that if we're going to put this to be, that should be sort of included as what the funding model should look like based on previous and going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, you had your hand up?
Just briefly, I mean, you know, I think for myself, the reason why I'm comfortable giving a B is that it sounded like, based on the earlier discussion, that in all likelihood, we may move in a direction that doesn't even require a clubhouse, in which case it becomes, you know, irrelevant who and where the funding comes, if that's the final direction. If that's not the final direction, then I would expect us to have that conversation. I think Councillor April's, you know, bang on about, you know, where's the funding come, what's the implications there for everybody else, and I think there's a time and place for those. But I think for the moment, until we sort out whether they need it or not and which field it's going to be, I think that all those other questions come later.
Okay, quickly, because this is obviously going to come back to us. Councillor Gartner?
I think there needs to be another option where we don't approve conditional, but we get the report back and then decide what's the report and all of the information back before we decide what to do.
We could do that then as a D, Donald, other direction to report, just to refer this back to staff.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, who do we have down for moving B?
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay? So we'll move that to a D. We all good with that? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. 1222, 1222, the street planting. Who pulled that, please? Councilor Gartner? Yeah.
I have no idea why.
A? Second. Councilor Maracas, Tom. Any other comments, questions? Councilor Abel? 22, street planting. 22. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 23, the wildlife park. Who-
I
Councilor
pulled it.
Thompson?
Just a quick question. You know, I know there's funds slated to be spent next year, but and I'm just looking for someone to just reaffirm. I thought there was still some conversation about the wildlife park, what it's going to look like, where it's going to go, with regards to online, offline ponds. So how does that conversation impact or affect the decision we're making tonight to earmark $1 million for next year?
Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what I would request is that council at least identify that they are in support of spending this much money in the wildlife park, regardless of what exactly it's going to ultimately look like. We have engaged a consultant, and we have been in conversations with excuse me, the Conservation Authority, and I've been in there personally with talking to them to help us get to a point where there is a plan that will meet the needs identified within Mr. Tomlinson's plan without it actually being exactly like Mr. Tomlinson's plans, because the Conservation Authority has reiterated they have big concerns with regards to online ponds. However, we would like to be able to demonstrate that we are able to do almost exactly the same things with offline ponds as Mr. Tomlinson had envisioned. And so we're trying to get to that point, get an approval from the Conservation Authority. Once we have approval of the Conservation Authority, we'll be coming forward to council, asking for council approval of that design. We will then, once we have that design, get into detailed designs, tendering, and at least now we have an estimate of, a preliminary estimate what we think it's going to cost, and we would have a commitment from council that we want to move forward with this particular project, and more than likely you want to move forward in a phased approach over a 5-year period.
Councilor?
So in other words, B. Thank you.
Councilor Gartner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is the consultant's report coming back to council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the design from the consultant will be coming back.
Thank you.
We're pretty well putting 2 plans in front of the Conservation Authority and trying to meld them as much as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I won't belabor the point. I do have some struggles with this, so I'll look forward to the report when it comes back to us. All in favor of B, please. Contrary? It's carried. Thank you. 1224. I'm sorry, who pulled 1224, the grade separation? I'm sorry? Councillor Thompson. 24, the grade separation for the,
I did. Just, if council were to approve the crossing, what impact would that be to traffic along Wellington Street? Would they all have to be diverted? I'm just trying to understand sort of the future implications of building this grade-separated crossing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't answer that question. This is very much like an engineering project. We're asking for design fees this year, and with that, we would then find out what issues we have with regards to any construction, hopefully tighten up the cost estimate, other than the one that we have taken out of the the Trails Master Plan. So this year, we're asking for design fees if council wishes us to pursue a pedestrian underpass at John West Way in Wellington.
But if I may, through you into Mr. Downey, if the recommendation is an underpass, I think I would take it you would have to tear up Wellington Street to build that underpass. Would that be a fair assumption?
Immediately, I would say yes, but it doesn't mean that's the only way it could go. I would suggest that's probably it, and there would more than likely be half of it would be built, and then once that was completed, then we could start on the other half while traffic was moving on the other side. But it would, I would say, would have an impact on the movement of the traffic in Wellington, but I can't tell you what specifically that would be and for how long that would be until I get into the design.
It's just, yeah. So I'll look forward to that report.
Councillor Thompson, your point's well taken, but at the same time, we install subways with tunnel boring machines. Now, I'm not suggesting we do a tunnel boring machine here, but I think there is an opportunity through the engineering study to look at in situ.
Yeah, that's why I just want to understand the impact, right? So
Yeah,
that's why I
absolutely.
look forward to that information, because as you know, it can be a challenge if you block off Wellington Street for people to especially get to the 404. So I was just looking for some answers.
Any other comments? Motion, please. A, Councillor Perry, second. Councillor Abel, thank you. All in favor?
They want to put it up.
Opposed? That is carried.
These are the privileges. Are you kidding?
1226, artificial turf.
No, the Trails Master Plan. They asked it. Swear to God, I'll show you in the master plan.
Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just looking, since we're talking about artificial turf, is this the one we just talked about at Shepherd's Bush?
Through you,
Danny?
Mr. Mayor, no, it's not. It's a new proposal you have not seen before. Staff are looking for other opportunities to put artificial turf within the community, and this is another opportunity. It follows much along the St. Max million model, where we would be building a field on Cardinal Carter.
Cardinal Carter.
Correct.
So I guess this is going to be a B in my mind, because there's, I think, an opportunity to at least discuss the possibility at Hallmark, which might be a little more centrally located. And I noticed we're funding the whole thing, so it's not like we're doing it with the school board. So, I mean, I would put it as a B and have that conversation, because we are going to be talking about artificial turf at Shepherd's Bush, et cetera. Oh,
It states right in here that it's a split.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the summation underneath, under the budget, where it says development charge and special purpose reserve fund. So I'm assuming that that was our funding. I didn't.
That's our funding, but then above that, it's about $2 million to be split equally with the board.
Thank you. I can see it printed. I'm used to just looking at the bottom line. So thank you for clarifying.
Any other comments or questions on this? Motion, please, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through to Mr. Downey. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cardinal Carter is on Bloomington, is it not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
And we currently use those fields for soccer and everything else now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we don't.
In
They're
the
not fit
past,
for play. They're not fit for play.
I might be thinking of the other school then, closer to Yonge Street.
Yeah, well, that's, Aurora High School is being used, but it's being permitted directly, I'm sorry.
I think we
no.
used to, because I remember, but my question is, and I'll be careful how to word this, but are we not exploring opportunities in that area that may or may not impact where we would put this artificial field?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. So this is not the only alternative that we have on the table. It is an alternative. So we thought we'd bring this forward to council to determine what level of support council may have at looking at this. the school board has not committed to funding 50% of this. So they may very well say no. We felt, though, that we needed some indication from council that this is something that you wished us to pursue, and so that we could come back and say, yes, so we have been able to or not been able to secure funding, and this is a model that works. Council can then take the option of whether or not they wish to proceed, or whether they wish to hold off and look at other options that might become available.
Thank you.
Councilor Marcus, Councilor Gartner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to quickly scan through the explanation. Is it, would it be multi-purpose or soccer-specific?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the school board isn't quite sure yet. St. Max was pretty clear that they wanted to be able to get into a multi-purpose and a track. The town's interest is for multi-purpose. Anything other over and above that, I think the school board would then have to decide what they were going to do.
Okay, that's great to hear that it'd be multi-purpose. I don't know if it says it in there or not. Maybe I just didn't read it. But did it say it in there and I just didn't read it? Yeah. Okay. No, so it's great that it's multi. Okay. Yes, I guess I would like to just see more, see like a report and kind of see what, I mean, am I interested? Yeah, sure. But I'd like to see more before we move forward.
Councilor Gartner.
Thank you. As was mentioned before, we have more than one opportunity in that general area to put an artificial turf field in, and I think we're only going to put one in at the moment. So I would like us to see I would like us to wait or have a more generic report. And that with the $2 million, $1 million from the school board would be the cost of the land.
Through you, the land would be included in that contribution, but no, they would have to also give some additional funding. That's what happened with St. Max. Their formula included not only land costs, but also additional costs for the construction of the facility, as well as any costs associated with facilities that were specifically the request of the school board, such as the track. So they paid 100% of the track. And so anything that they wanted over and above what we would normally put in would be with them.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion then? Looking for a B? D? So refer back to staff for more information. Okay. All comfortable with that? All in favor? Opposed? The last one would be for Mr. Downey, I believe, picnic tables, 1228. Who pulled that, Madam Clerk? Wendy. Councilor Gartner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this has to do with the picnic tables.
Yep.
I couldn't tell from the picture, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey, couldn't tell from the picture whether these are going to be accessible picnic tables so that one end or both ends can fit a wheelchair underneath. At least some of them to be accessible.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. There will be accessible tables as well as other tables, but we make sure that there are accessible tables in all the parks.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments? Motion? A. Councilors Gartner and Maracus, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I believe that covers everything for Mr. Downey, is that correct?
Through you, Mayor, thank you. Other than the museum collection, did you want to have me for that discussion, or?
No, no one folded, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'll wish Kim well
do.
wishes from council. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Downey. Enjoy the wedding. We'll go back then, if we can, council, to 12-2. Councilor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this kind of just goes back to our earlier discussion, through you to Mr. Simonoskis. So these funds were originally in the JOC project and were deleted from the final project budget. Why?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and then I'll turn it over to Tasha to describe it. Actually, this was a council decision when we were tendering the project. We had a number of optional items, and this was one of the optional items, and it was deleted from the tender at that time to be considered at a future date, and this is the opportunity.
So just as far, so this was deleted before it went out for tender?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Thompson?
Yeah, I was, for those that weren't on council last term, I was going to make mention of it. It actually was highlighted in a report back in 2014 that it would be pulled out and tendered at a later date. Not so much about the land, but more about it being in the IT Disaster Recovery Center.
Motion, please. Councilors Marcus and Gartner, all in favor? Oh. Opposed? That is carried. Trial 7, Councilor Thompson.
I'm not going to put forward a motion at this time. I'm just going to share my comments. You know, I've spoken about this on numerous occasions. I still, you know, I'm looking for information and understanding about why we're paying the $200,000. You know, I've raised it in the past. Other municipalities, Newmarket, for example, you know, ask the businesses to pay for theirs. I still have questions about liability. All of these things I've brought up every time it's been before us. I've still yet to see answers to any of the questions that I've asked. And so, you know, I can't support it in any manner until those simple questions get answered.
Councilor Perry. Councilor Abel.
So in conversations actually with Councillor Thompson, I was reminded that in most of these cases, BIAs are the driving force, you know, for this kind of work, and we don't have one in town. So I'm not sure how best to proceed. And I do agree that the $200,000 price point is pretty expensive, especially if it's just going to be a pilot project. I'm not sure what the best way, what the best technique is if we were to move forward. But I don't want this idea to disappear off the table. I would be happy to not A, not B. I do sort of agree with not even C. I think before we defer the project, we need to decide whether or not we're going to move forward on the project, and we haven't had that information put on the table so that we can have a worthwhile discussion on that. So I think this is a prime opportunity for us to go look at something like a D again, in terms of not approve it, but just seek more information, because we haven't had the information come to us in whole. There are some more questions. Councillor Thompson brought up some good ones with regards to insurance, and before we answer all those questions, or before we make a decision, those questions need to be answered. So I'm leaning towards a refer back to staff for more information before I'm even prepared to make any of the financial decisions or commitments.
Others speak, Councilor Marcus? Oh, Councilor Abel, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You don't have to apologize. I have this vision of what we're doing for the downtown, and it includes a number of pieces, and one of them is the cultural precinct, and one of them is this, and I think there's other pieces that we should be bringing in and looking at it as a whole, and then saying, what is the business, what are we trying to do? And we're trying to revitalize the downtown, we're trying to enhance our community, we're trying to attract investment, and so when you put all this together, it looks fantastic. Dealing with them at one item as another, it's hard to see. So do I see doing 4 months in the summer of taking it down to one lane? I would like to try and do it once a month on Sundays for the first time, to try doing that and working with some organizations, whether it be the chamber, festival, merchants, artisans, music, bars, and try it for a day on Sunday and see how it works, along with the cultural precinct. And the idea is just to engage the whole downtown core and expand on these great ideas that we have. So, that's where I sort of go. I mean, I'm in full support of moving ideas forward and putting them together if they fit a vision that we have, which I don't think we have at the moment. So I would go at a B, and I think if we looked at it at that way, we might be able to say, okay, you know what, let's try it small scale, $20,000 for the first year. We'll do it 4 times in the summer, and we'll put some investment into putting something together for Sunday afternoons to see how that pilot works. And maybe try and draw them into the cultural precinct and make it a bigger vision along those lines. So that's where I sort of am on this. Mayor has not come to me and talked to me on any of this item, this initiative of his. So I've not had the benefit of that at this time. I'm sure we all appreciate when we are engaged. I figure if councillors aren't being engaged, then it might be indicative of how engaged the community is at large. So I would like to move it, but pending further detailed report to council on perhaps moving this idea forward and moving it into the grand plan.
Councilor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've voted against this every single time it's been in front of us. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with us spending money on this. I mean, do I think down in the future, could it possibly be something to look at? Maybe when there is restaurants, music people, but what are we putting a patio for? For someone to get their hair cut? For someone to get their nails done on a patio? For why not? Someone to get their eyes checked out at the optometrist? There's very little restaurants or anything of really that actually are going to use a patio right now. Down the road, could there be, once we do a lot of the stuff that we're looking and talking about doing? Yeah, maybe. And we can look at it. But the other aspect is too, is like Councillor Thompson mentioned, I mean, I've constantly asked for reports, and we were told the last time specifically that let's defer this to budget so we can get that information that a lot of us are looking for. And I said at that time, I'm not optimistic that we'll actually get that information, and here we are, and there's no information again. So to put it off to another time to say, let's get another report, I'm not optimistic I'm going to get that report again. Well, it dies and you can bring it back in 6 months. You don't need to keep pushing this off. I think it's just a waste of time because we're not getting the information that we're looking for. And so I'm not in favor of any of the options here in front of us.
Councillor Tom, excuse me.
I would be in favor of what Councillor Peary had put forward, which is a referral to staff for more information. I mean, that's pretty, if we don't get the information after that, then I don't know what to say. So I agree, and Councillor Thompson said it quite well. I mean, there are a lot of questions, but I don't think, as Councillor Peary said, I would agree that letting it die would be appropriate either. So if we can refer it to staff, more information, and then we can choose to proceed from there.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. I think Councillor Thompson's points are well taken in terms of the price. And when the price first came forward, it was to make it not look cheap, quite frankly. But that doesn't mean that the same effect couldn't be had for $2,000, as an example. So, so I think going back to staff with, some specific criteria that I think Mr. Simonovskis is listening to. It was, in my fault, mislabeled as a parking plan. It was really more of a streetscape engagement plan, pedestrian engagement plan. Those are certainly some of the discussions that I had with the businesses in that area. How do we make the streetscape more amenable to have people actually coming there? Is it chicken or egg in terms of do you do something like this first and then Hope that restaurants will come, or hope the restaurants will come and do this, I don't know. We have not tried this. What I do know is that we've talked for many, many years about downtown revitalization, about Yonge Street revitalization, and so this was my goal, or one of my steps, pardon me, to say how can we accomplish that goal. I know that I've had some brief conversations, which I will, as soon as I had a chance to digest them, I was going to update council with, from Ron Palmer, who was instrumental in the Promenade plan. He's offered to look at some things for us, no charge, which was very gracious of him, how it would fit with the Promenade plan from his point of view. I think that would be beneficial, and I would certainly make sure that assuming it goes back to Mr. Simonovskis, that information would be made available to him. And maybe we do one more round, as both Councillor Peary and Councillor Thomas said, and if we don't get the answers that satisfies council, then the project will die. I've got Councillor Kim and then Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notwithstanding the $200,000 bill and who will be paying for that, I think in concept, the idea can work, but I think the order of operations, which you alluded to, I think that's where the issue is. In my opinion, I think we need to solidify what the cultural precinct is going to look like, and once that big core plan is established and we know what that area is going to be and look like, then that will be the magnet, and that will be the where you'll have the ripple effect in terms of what that Yonge Street corridor can look like, and will be the draw. And so I think if we put this streetscape plan without the core cultural precinct already in place, I think it will likely lead to failure. So I would much like to see the cultural precinct plan come into place, and then something like this perhaps be implemented layered on top of that. And I think that will have a greater chance of success. So the concept, I have no problem with it moving forward, but I think the order of operations just needs to be looked at.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
I was on Main Street in Newmarket, and they've done this. It's wonderful. It would be wonderful if it could work. I do think that Councillor Kim is correct that we need to get the cultural precinct. We need to decide what we're going to do about that. But we have to keep in mind that whatever we decide about the cultural precinct, we keep the revitalization of Yonge Street at the front of our mind too, because they do go hand in hand. So I don't support this at the time. I don't know if Mr. Simonovskis has the expertise to really come back with the information. If Mr. Palmer would, that's his area. If he can help us, that would be great.
He has already offered that, Councillor Gardner.
Is he from Aurora?
No, actually, Mr. Palmer lives at Yonge and Bloor.
Ah, he knows a lot about BIAs. Thank you.
He's very, very prominent in the local BIA too, I might add. Was it something we said? I think the one thing that I think that we're missing out on here, and just as a general comment, is that we do things like this in isolation as opposed to looking at things holistically. And so I know that Mr. Nader Rosny had talked about an overall parking plan. Councillor Maracas has his project, the no left turn lane. I know that Mr. Simonovskis has got a sheet in here on a right turn lane at Yonge and Wellington, which has actually been out there for quite a while. And yeah, and Mr. Holmes, who likes to write into the paper now and then, will be happy to see that, indeed. So I think this, if Councillor Perry's motion goes forward, I think it gives us an opportunity to look at this holistically. How does it fit into the cultural precinct? How does it fit into all these other things that are going on? Councillor Thompson.
Just picking up on something you said, where you said that, you know, perhaps maybe it would have been better to label it as a streetscape plan. You know, we do have some challenge with the Aurora Promenade Streetscape Plan. It's come to this table a number of times. There's been lots of dialogue. I know it's still in the 10-year capital plan, but it's part of the 2018 budgetary discussions and stuff. And so, you know, maybe that's the more appropriate place for this. When the Promenade Streetscape Plan comes and we have some more discussions, then, you know, then you could look at it from a holistic perspective. But I think, you know, it probably belongs more in the streetscape plan than any traffic or parking plan, you know, based on your comments and sort of, you know, what I've heard around the table as well. Just a thought.
Councillor Abel?
And I'll add to the streetscape idea, because I think now we're sort of hitting it. But I think activity is also a big draw, and nothing draws bigger to Yonge Street than our street festival in June every year. That's 40,000 people assemble there. I don't know why we can't sort of tie that in streetscape activity along with getting that sort of activity going in there. So, I mean, that was sort of my idea, trying it on a trial basis. But to the mayor's point, and finally, we're hearing in isolation, you know, that's fragmenting. We're better looking at the whole picture, and if it's downtown revitalization, almost anything that you have should be saying this is what it contributes to a downtown revitalization.
Any other speakers? Councillor Perry's motion was D. Donald, refer back to staff, and Councillor Tom seconded that. Any further comment or question? All in favor? I'm sorry?
If we're referring to staff, what's the expectation?
Well, to at least answer your two questions.
I think,
I got one too, but yes.
we've had a great deal of questions over the last few
Mr.
years, I'm tempted to say. So I want all of those answers. I didn't move A or B because I don't think we need to be committing funds to this for 2017 right now. That's something we can look at afterwards if, on the whole, we agree that all of our questions have been answered. But for right now, there are still a lot of questions out in the open, and I think it's fair to have them answered before we consider moving forward and you know, putting any money on this. Let's just answer the questions. If we need clarity, great. And ultimately, I'm not really willing to put a timeline on it, but if staff can't get it back to us, then, you know, if they can't answer the questions, then clearly the project's not viable. So that's my view on it.
Mr. Simonauskas?
If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose maybe a council workshop, and I'd like to sit with Mr. Nadarozny and Ramuno and maybe have a conversation. My thought here is comments are all very valid. Many factors, traffic, parking, promenade, culture, there's a number of aspects here, and maybe a workshop that maybe Mr. Palmer could facilitate would draw out all the concerns that we're hearing and verify them from his perspective, because he has that overall view, and then that might set the tone for what kind of information either I'm bringing back or maybe Mr. Moon has to bring back, or whatever source might come. That might be a way to capture all the perspectives.
Councillor Gartner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It just occurred to me that we do have somebody on staff who knows quite a lot about BIAs, and that would be Shelley Ware from Barrie. She knows about it. I believe she's quite experienced from Barrie. So, and she's our special events person, so might be worth a conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Abel?
I like very much what Mr. Simonauskas said. If we have, and you brought up Mr. Palmer, I mean, he's familiar, someone that is familiar. Again, Shelley Ware, she's aware of Barrie. We need some sort of ideas outside to kind of consolidate what our thoughts and what we're putting on the table.
Okay, then calling the vote, please, which is to refer to staff. All in favor? Contrary? That's carried. (12.9) Young Wellington intersection improvement. Councillor Marcos, did you call that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonovskis, will the region be putting in any funds towards this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the first funding for 2017 is for design, feasibility and design, which we had to work closely with the region because it is their intersection. I'm assuming there'll be some contribution from the region. It wouldn't be unsimilar to the work that we did just recently at Industrial in Wellington, where at regional intersection, we had to invest in the approaches, and there was some funding that they had to expend to deal with the signalization. So the cost sharing and all that would have to be worked out, and that would be a future report.
And that's fine, so I guess, so we'd be running the show, though, on this one, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I guess my question would be, is considering that they charge us 6% administration and 6% inspection, can we do the same to them?
Sure.
Well, I would like to think that we would,
I don't know if they'll
considering they
pay
do
it,
it to us.
but, you know what, they have a number of policies. We can look into some chargebacks and try and recover as much cost as we
Well,
can.
what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Councillor Thompson?
In regards to the right turn lane, I thought that that was already, I guess, underway with regards to Treasure Hill and the development there. And that was all part of the plan that came for us through you to Mr. Ramuno. If you can just give us a little bit of an update.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We've secured the widening along the frontage of the Carpino development. But if you do recall, we did have a closed session report that dealt with the balance of securing. So we don't have those lands yet, but I think that'll be the next step is we do have the Carpino land. It's the balance.
Councillor Abel?
Well, I think it's just fantastic news that we can put in a right turn lane. Many of us saw what the right turn lane going west on Wellington did going northbound at the TD. I mean, it's just fabulous, long overdue, and we finally have the opportunity to do so. So to put the money into a design, we can't move it quick enough. I'm full support of A, and I'll move.
A?
So moved.
Is there a second? Councillor Thompson? Tom, thank you. No further, no further comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's an A for 12-9. 12-11? Yeah, 12-11. I thought 12-11 was pulled. Oh, you're right. Councillor Gardner, you pulled 12-11?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering how this works expense-wise, because Leslie Street is a regional road. So thank you.
Yes, certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. So basically, this is a project the region would construct, and this is our contribution to their project, and they would charge us the fee and do the work for us.
So would it be possible to do the work ourselves?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, not actually, not when you're tendering the entire project, and the efficiency comes to the administration and the work all being done in the same quarter at the same time.
Thank you.
Councillor Abel?
On the east side, Leslie Street on the east side, going south between Wellington and Don Hill, there
Correct.
is a asphalt path there that
There was, correct, there was a temporary path put in, primarily driven, I think, by a lot of the users in the Don Hill area to be able to have an access to walk up. But the region is widening the road, so there's going to be some additional work being done. This is part of that.
I see, okay.
Yeah, that'll have to be
So they're going to widen Leslie south of Wellington for a bit,
for a bit, yeah.
probably down to
Just past Don Hill, I believe.
Don Hillock, okay. So they have expanded in a couple lanes. I drive it every day, so
Yeah.
I'm just trying to vision. So the temporary asphalt, I guess that's looking at the region's efficiency. Put the asphalt in and then tear it up.
Yeah, I know they were under pressure. I know the police were very
Okay.
much asking for something, so.
Thank you.
No other comments or questions? Motion, please. Thank you, Sarah. Second? Second for Councillor Tom. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 1219 St. John Side Road.
I think that was mine, and I think it's the same question that I had about the regional road.
Motion then, please, Councillor.
A, please.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Perry. No other comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. What have we got here? That's it? Did we do the last one? Okay. Alrighty. That finishes tab 12, Council. Tab 13, there's just, yeah, there's the 113.2 and then the 2 additional items. So the first one is the emergency response plan and update. We do that on a regular basis. Any comments or question on that? Motion? Okay. Councillors Thompson and Gartner. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So that leaves the Canada 150 celebration and the facility advertising and sponsorship program. Anyone wish to speak to the Canada 150? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, why is the funding tax rate stabilization? It just doesn't seem to be the appropriate use of that particular funds for this celebration.
Mr. Elliott, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just before I get into that, let me just provide a little bit of additional information that I asked for this sheet. I'm just going to give you the breakdown of the 4 events. The military tattoo is $40,000. The powwow is $17,000. Family first night fireworks, $12,000. And the legacy project is $25,000 for a total of $94,000. With respect to the funding source, we wanted to, because this is one time, we didn't want this necessarily to be a direct pass onto the tax bill, but it could be a use of the hydro funds. It could be any type of thing, but we can change that on the fly here today if we wish.
Personally, it just doesn't seem like an appropriate use for the stabilization funds. I think in the past, with Aurora's 150th, I think it came out of the council discretionary fund. If council approves it, I think that would be a more appropriate one for myself, but that's one thing that just stood out.
Okay.
Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like the last time I spoke, I'm in favor of a D, waiting for report back from staff. Ultimately, I don't think it's necessarily our responsibility to be funding in this large part Canada's birthday party. If the federal government wants to step up to the plate and provide us with some funding, I'm more than happy to have these, in part or in total, depending on the funding, move forward. So I don't want to say no outright, but until a decision comes back from the federal government, I'm also not prepared to move forward on all of these projects and initiatives. So either a D, I'd even be okay with a B, just so that if we want to move forward in part, the funding's there. But, I definitely not an A, and I don't think C would be appropriate.
Mr. Elliott, I'm going to come to you, but just before I do that, the request from the Canada 150 Committee, the suggestion, pardon me, was, did council, or the request yet, did council want to put a placeholder in its 2017 budget in case we did not get any funding at all? So that was the whole purpose of this ask. So, Mr. Elliott, Councillor Perry's motion, which would be
My preference would be for D, but I could be convinced to go towards B.
So D, to hold pending Canada 150 funding, something like that? Does that work?
It could be to defer the decision until the outcome of the Canada 150 application funding, or funding application has been heard. Something along those lines. We can work with the clerk. And then at that time, if we get funding from Canada 150, we can report back, yay, we did. Or we can report back, no, we didn't. Would you like to spend $94,000?
Does that kind of cover what where you're going? Okay. Everybody understand that? Speakers, Councillor Marcus, you wanted to speak, or Councillor Gartner, or Abel? Okay.
I just wanted to know if we're any closer to knowing about that funding?
No.
Thank you.
January, February?
The application's in, and we're just waiting. It's not quite like pregnancy, because we don't know when.
They said, what, 160 or 180 days, or it was something crazy. Was it? Councillor Abel?
Well, I mean, I said we should put a placeholder in for the 2015 budget and again in 2016. So I'm in favor of putting a placeholder in. I'm very disappointed in what we have here as the suggestions. I asked Mayor Dahl when the 150 committee had met, and he said they just met in October, I think, or September, and before that in May. But I do remember when we did the 150 for the town in 2013, I remember seeing almost every council meeting, at least twice a month they would meet, and they came up with some great ideas. And so the only new thing I see here is a powwow, but I have no idea what that is. It's an activity or celebration. Of course, we know about the military tattoo. I thought we could really have done a lot better coming up with something.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor
I
Perry?
don't think it's fair to tell the committee members that they didn't work hard enough for one councillor's point of view. I don't think that's appropriate to do in public.
Councillor
If
Abel,
he
if you
wants to
could-
keep going on, that's fine, but I've raised a point of order.
If you could rephrase, Councillor Abel.
Well, first of all, I never made any comment about the committee, so I don't know what it is you want. I'll continue on my thought process. We could have done enhancing and expanding programs that are existing. You have the festivals that go on, like the street festival. There's no engagement going on with any other activities or organizations. This is solely I'm just sort of disappointed in that we could have done better with the time allotted and the funding opportunities that we could have had.
Councillor Tom?
I just think what happened was midstream as well, is that the Tory government, when they introduced the grant, it was very broad in its scope. It had a lot of different things you could apply for. The Liberals were elected, they changed it. And so if you look at what they changed it to, I don't even think they would have agreed to funding for certain things. So the scope of what was fundable under the grant changed with the federal government's change in October. And so if you look at the document from the Tory government to the Liberal government, very different. So I would urge you to look at that, and maybe that's maybe a reason why the committee was a bit more hamstrung,
Well,
as you said.
fair enough, but I was talking about more how we could have prepped and moved ahead with the celebration, the town contributing. I believe the town should contribute and celebrate the celebration of 150. I think we should have been making plans and engaging and seeing what kind of ideas we could have done with community organizations such as and there are several that go on outside of the town events. I did ask that when we would have a list of all the events and the budget that we spend. I had asked Mr. Downey for that, for budget, and that's not here for us to discuss as well. So we do a number of events. We do Canada Day, we do Haunted Forest, we do Easter egg, just to give an idea of what we spend on budget for celebrating events here in our town. I'd ask the council,
Okay, but I'm not sure how that fits with the 150.
because then we could have put in how much we already put in and how much more we're asking, to give some idea of where those funds are and how we could best spend them. So that council has an idea and can make some suggestions. You know, I think it's great that people get together and volunteer and give you some ideas, but I also think it would have been beneficial that we would have had an opportunity to discuss it, give our comments. Those comments could have gone back to committee, and then maybe we could have worked and done something a little bit better. But we are getting this, and we really have no time. So that's more fulsome of where I'm coming from. Yeah, I think that's what we should have done. We should have been able to give some comments and ideas and send it back to the committee.
Well, the Canada 150 Committee has reported to council through reports. And
With
that's all
ideas
I-
like this, Mr. Mayor?
Pardon me?
With what we have here?
Councillor Gartner, Councillor Maracas.
Just some things for the record. I think that we wanted this time, different from the Aurora's 150th, to have, make this a complete citizen initiative. If I recall, we didn't even want to put anyone on council, from council on that committee. And I think we've put that committee in a difficult position because we haven't given them any funding parameters. So they're just kind of waiting till they know more. With respect to Aurora's 150th, they worked very hard, and they, in a very condensed schedule, because they had some issues. They were under a timeline. We left it very late, and they didn't have proper staff reports. So they spun their wheels for a long time, and then when they got the proper staff report, they had to have all these meetings. I can't even remember if it was every week or every other week or maybe twice a week. So it's quite different circumstances. Anyway, I know we all appreciate the work that our volunteers do, and that the intention wasn't to say that we don't.
Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I don't think anyone had any intentions of putting down the volunteers of the committee. It's not the way I took it. I was just going to ask you, Mr. Mayor, you're the chair of the committee. Maybe you can kind of give us a rundown on you know, what the committee did, like, you know, when you guys met, just to kind of give everyone a sense of what happened throughout the beginning of the committee to this point. I'm thinking maybe that's kind of what Councillor Abel was getting at. I don't know, because I don't think he was intentionally trying to slag any volunteers or committee members. Yeah.
Well,
So-
I'm happy to do that, but not today because I don't have that information at my fingertips. We've met numerous times, but as Councillor Tom and Gartner pointed out, the committee's between a bit of a rock and a hard place here in terms of there wasn't even full support at council to have the committee. So I'm happy to put that together. I don't have it in front of me, and I'm not going to do it from memory.
And that's fine, and I agree with you, the committee is in a hard place, but that was some of the conversations that we had when we looked at creating the committee, of whether we should do it without knowing whether we have the funds or not. And that was why some of us thought we shouldn't do it, because we would be in the position we are at this moment right now.
That's right.
And so here we are, where a lot of us thought we would be, and we're between the rock and a hard place. But I guess we'll figure out some way to get through it.
If there's no further comments, Councillor Perry's motion is on the floor. All in favor? Contrary? It's carried. Facility and Advertising, 13-4. Councillor Tom.
Thank you. It's kind of a shame that Al left on this one. Because, you know, I brought that motion forward at council to look at our advertising strategy, and I think the report that came back was excellent. And I think that my perspective is, I'm not sure we need to spend $90,000 on a consultant. I think that it is possible that I have immense trust that we have excellent people working for the town across not only Al's department, but all the departments, who can figure out how we can maximize our revenue from advertising without having to spend $90,000 on a consultant. And I'm not, but then my question would be, why am I wrong in that assumption? because I didn't, this was part of the report that came back, we referred it to budget. So I don't know if we can perhaps move this to another budget meeting, where Al's here.
Counselor Tom, we could either defer it to a GC and/or to the budget meeting, that this will come back to.
We have some operating budget meetings, so why don't we just
Well,
tag
we've
on?
also got, Mr. Elliott, when are you thinking of the capital budget meeting? Council
This-
meeting?
We can bring forward, our intent was to bring forward the concluding capital budget final approval report to November the 8th, which is a council meeting. And we could have this as
Could we bring that the week before?
we could bring this item to the week before.
To the GC,
Yeah.
which October,
We can bring this
November
singular item
1st.
to the week before GC,
November 1st.
and the rest to council.
I'll move that.
So deferred to the November the 1st, seconded by Councilor Maracus. All in favor? Contrary, that is carried, I believe. That covers it. Well done. First pitch is in 8 minutes. Capital budget is November the 8th. Operating budget, I'm sorry, off the top of my head, Mr. Elliott?
The operating kickoff was originally scheduled for Monday, November the 7th, and we've decided that since that would just simply be a quick presentation, here's the binder, see you next week, we're going to do that on the 8th, just as we just recently did with the capital introduction. And so we will see you on November the 8th with a budget insert for you. And 8th is a regular council. Yeah, November the 14th is a Monday, I believe, Lisa? And that is all day. And so while I appreciate your patience and contributions today on a Saturday, the next all-day is on a Monday.
If I may, since we all know now it's a full day on Monday, I know last year there was an issue and a number of people couldn't make it. Perhaps people, if they can't, could provide the clerk with some notice now, because, you know, well, not now, today, I mean, in the next few weeks, because it would be a shame if we had an all-day Monday meeting and only, you know, 5 or 6 councilors could make it, so.
No, we'll send out